Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at the life of Francie, a pretty complex character in the middle of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. But here's the thing. We're not using like a typical history book or news articles for this one.
No, we're not.
We're going to a novel, Crossed by Austin Duffy.
Yeah, using fiction can really help us get to that human side of conflict,
Yeah.
almost like stepping into a time machine.
Mhm.
Where the sights and sounds of that period come alive through the story itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think through Francie's story, we really uncover those moral dilemmas, those compromises that just ordinary people had to face during this wild time.
Yeah.
And Francie's life, anything but ordinary. I mean, this guy's a customs officer
Yeah.
for the British government,
Right.
but also an active member of the IRA, so the Irish Republican Army.
A double life. And that was actually pretty common back then.
Right.
Many people found themselves having to kind of straddle these two worlds, constantly worried about being found out. So can you imagine living with that?
Yeah.
That pressure,
Oh, God.
the fear, the moral conflicts, the constant inner turmoil.
Yeah. And you really see that turmoil come through in the novel.
Mm-hmm.
Francie comes across as super disillusioned with both sides, almost like a deep cynicism in his words. Like even when he's doing these IRA operations, there's a sense of detachment.
Yeah. There's a quote that really captures this. Francie says, "The politicos have won out. Jobs for the boys in suits. We could have been the mujahideen, principled, ruthless. Instead, we're smugglers and thugs and petty criminals."
Gosh, it's a bleak picture he's painting of the IRA.
Yeah.
Like an organization that was supposed to be driven by this strong ideology, right?
Exactly.
Reduced to petty crime and smuggling.
Yeah.
It's so far from that heroic image, we usually associate with these types of movements.
Yeah. It really makes you think about, how idealism can kind of get chipped away
Yeah.
within any movement,
Of course.
especially when they're dealing with power and compromise. And the IRA was in this really complex political landscape,
Right.
having to balance, violence with also political maneuvering to reach their goals.
Absolutely. And speaking of that political maneuvering, the novel brings up this Donnelly case. I mean, this thing throws a wrench into everything for the IRA and really shows some of the inner tensions.
Yeah, you've got Darren Donnelly. He's this young IRA member, botches a job, flees to Amsterdam. His mother, desperate to get him back, stages this huge public protest, demanding answers.
Talk about a headache for the IRA leadership.
Huge headache, especially for Francie.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to keep a low profile, especially with this ceasefire gaining momentum. So it's this clash between loyalty and pragmatism.
Right.
You've got the IRA, they're built on loyalty to the cause, even if that means armed struggle.
Yeah.
But they also have to be smart, think strategically.
You got to be practical, right?
Exactly.
And that's a tough balance.
How do you reconcile those two things? How do you balance secrecy and control with, a grieving mother
Right.
and a community that just wants answers?
Yeah.
Really tough spot.
Makes you think about the pressure on leaders in these movements.
For sure. Every decision has these ripple effects,
Yeah.
And that line between protecting the cause and protecting individuals can get really blurry.
It does. Okay, so let's talk about this Naylor, the local IRA commander. This novel, I gotta say, does an incredible job making him scary, but also, strangely interesting.
Yeah, he embodies all those contradictions of leadership.
Right.
Inspires loyalty, respect, but also uses fear and intimidation to maintain control.
Totally.
Hints of brutality.
Yeah.
But also, he's got this intellectual side.
Yes. And the novel really plays that up.
It makes him so complex.
It does. Like, he's obsessed with birds.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically this flamingo that just shows up randomly in the harbor.
Right.
And he's always quoting the Encyclopedia Britannica, which honestly is a bit unsettling given, his position of power.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Almost like he wants something more than the violence and chaos.
Yeah.
Almost looking for beauty or knowledge as a balance, to the brutality he's part of.
Right. And I feel like he's got Francie all figured out.
Oh, yeah.
Uses a combo of threats and promises to keep him in line, loyal to the cause. It's almost like a warped father-son relationship between them.
Really highlights that hierarchy within the IRA and the pressure to conform.
Definitely.
It makes me wonder, is Francie really all in? Or is he just reacting to Naylor's manipulations?
Well, as the story goes on, things start to shift. Big time. You've got this push for a ceasefire gaining steam, And it really creates a lot of anxiety within the IRA.
A lot of members, Francie included, are really unsettled by it. I mean, they've given their lives to this fight, and now it's like everything they believed in is being questioned.
Right. There's a scene, actually, where Francie goes on this drunken rant about the ceasefire. And it really lays bare his growing disillusionment with the whole movement.
Yeah, he says, they perhaps were the biggest Egypts of them all. They died for nothing. Jobs for the boys in suits.
Jeez.
It just shows how personal this conflict is.
Absolutely.
The ceasefire isn't just politics.
Yeah.
It's a threat to their whole identity,
Right.
to their sense of purpose.
It is. And this disillusionment really sets the stage for this disturbing incident. We're calling it the handy burn incident.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, I think we need to take a little break, and we'll come back and really unpack what happens with this pivotal event and the fallout from it.
Welcome back, to our look at Francie and the whole mess of the troubles in Northern Ireland.
When we left off, we were just about to dig into the handy burn incident.
Right.
A turning point, I think, that really shows just how dark things can get within the IRA. And it makes Francie's loyalties even more unclear, you know?
Absolutely. So Handy Burn, he's that young, volatile IRA member prone to violence.
Right, right.
And this incident involves Kathy Murphy, a teenager,
Yeah.
whose father is suspected of being an informer, giving info to the Brits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay, and the incident itself, I mean, it's awful.
it is.
Handy sexually assaults Kathy.
It's brutal.
Yeah. It sends shockwaves to the entire community.
Mm-hmm.
And it really reveals a deep moral crisis within the IRA.
Especially when they're trying to present themselves as, a legitimate political force.
Right, working towards peace.
Yeah. This act just completely undermines their moral authority.
Yeah.
How can an organization fighting for justice and freedom allow this to happen within their own ranks?
Exactly. It's a betrayal, not just against Kathy, but against everything the IRA claims to stand for.
It is, and it forces us to confront this hard truth about how power can corrupt, even those who think they're fighting for a good cause.
Right, right.
And, it also brings up this bigger issue, one that's often ignored in conflict zones, the vulnerability of women.
Yeah.
The specific violence they face. The novel really shows the trauma Kathy goes through, physical and psychological, and it makes us think about the lasting impact of that violence.
Absolutely. So how does the IRA leadership, Naylor specifically, respond to this? Do they hold Handy accountable?
Taylor's response, it's all about protecting the IRA's image, maintaining control. He orders a cover-up, tries to silence Kathy, bury the truth.
Classic case of putting the organization above the individual.
It is.
It's so easy for those in power to ignore suffering when it threatens their position.
Yeah.
But what about Francie? I mean, he's already wrestling with his loyalty. How does he react to all of this?
Well, Francie is deeply disturbed, both by the incident and by Naylor trying to sweep it under the rug. This is where we see his conscience really battling with his commitment to the IRA.
Right. And then it all culminates in what we're calling Francie's walk of shame. He goes against Naylor's direct orders, publicly walks with Kathy through the town.
Exposing Handy's crime for everyone to see.
Wow. What a turning point for him. Rejecting that code of silence, publicly acknowledging Kathy's suffering.
And a huge risk, putting himself in direct opposition to Naylor, to the entire IRA leadership.
It's a powerful statement, though.
It is.
About individual responsibility. The guts it takes to break free from a corrupt system.
It makes you wonder what pushed him to this point. Was it just Kathy? Or was it, all the disillusionment building up, all the compromises he'd been forced to make?
Right. And what happens after he does this? I mean, when you challenge an organization like the IRA...
There are consequences. Naylor is furious, feels completely betrayed and undermined. Remember, control is everything to him. And Francie directly challenged that.
So what does he do?
Naylor calls Francie to his farmhouse, which is more like a fortress, really. The whole atmosphere is tense, menacing.
Oh, gosh.
Naylor even brings up the Donnelly case, implying that maybe Francie was involved in Darren's disappearance.
Oh, wow. Classic power play. Reminding Francie how vulnerable he is.
Yeah, using fear, intimidation to try and bring him back in line.
But he doesn't just use threats, does he?
No. He also tries to appeal to Francie's ambition, dangles the possibility of promotion, especially with his connection to that influential politician,
Right.
MOC, suggests Francie could become a key player in this new political landscape that's emerging.
Carrot and stick approach.
Exactly. Violence and punishment on one hand, power and influence on the other.
Right. And Naylor is a master at this. playing on Francie's fears and desires. But Francie seems unfazed.
Yeah. He's reached this point where threats and promises don't work anymore. Like he's questioning everything he once believed in,
Yeah.
searching for something, some moral compass in a world that feels totally corrupt.
It's like he's going through a transformation, right?
Yeah.
A reckoning with his past.
He's not going to be their pawn anymore.
And while all this is happening with Francie, Kathy Murphy, she becomes this unexpected force for change.
She does. Despite everything she's been through, she refuses to be silenced. She starts speaking out, sharing her story, challenging the IRA, exposing their hypocrisy.
That's incredibly brave, especially in a community where fear and silence are so prevalent.
It is. And it has this ripple effect. Her bravery inspires others to come forward. People start questioning the IRA's righteousness. The cracks in their facade become impossible to ignore.
Wow. So she becomes a symbol of resistance.
She does, demanding accountability from those in power. And her story, it has a huge impact on Francie.
I bet.
He sees her courage as this stark contrast to the IRA's cowardice.
Yeah.
Her willingness to stand up resonates with his own struggle, to find some moral compass.
Right. Like he sees a glimmer of hope in her,
Yeah.
even in these dark times.
Mhm.
And while all this personal drama is unfolding, the IRA is planning one last act before the ceasefire kicks in.
Right. They're on the verge of peace negotiations, but they decide to pull off this major heist.
What? I mean, it's bold.
It is.
It's contradictory.
It really shows the contradictions within the movement.
It does. Even as they talk peace, they're still caught up in violence and crime.
Exactly. Makes you wonder about their commitment to peace.
Yeah.
Are they just trying to grab resources before everything changes?
That's a good question. So who do they put in charge of this crazy operation?
Naylor puts Bernard Brady in charge. He's a veteran IRA member, meticulous, careful.
Right. Total opposite of Handy Byrne.
Yeah.
Why him?
Naylor knows this heist needs a steady hand, someone who can minimize risk. It shows their strategic thinking even as they move towards peace.
So it's not just about chaos. They have a plan.
Exactly. And don't forget MOC's role in all this. He's the one pulling the strings, using the IRA for his own political ambitions.
Right.
He wants that money to fund his campaigns, secure his power in this new political landscape.
He's playing both sides, isn't he? Using the IRA while presenting himself as this peacemaker?
He is. And Francie's trapped in the middle, gathering intel for MOC, thinking he's helping the peace process. But as things unfold, he starts to see the truth, the manipulations, the human cost.
So as we hit into the last part of this story,
Yeah.
the stakes are high, the IRA is fractured, the ceasefire is shaky, and Francie, he's at a crossroads.
He is. He's seen the dark side of the movement, witnessed the courage of those who stand up to it. His choices will have consequences, not just for himself, but for everyone around him.
Welcome back, to our deep dive into Francie's world in the middle of the troubles.
Yeah, we left things pretty intense. The IRA pulling off a major heist right when they're supposed to be moving towards peace.
A real power move fueled by greed and desperation.
Absolutely.
And right in the middle of it all is Francie, disillusioned, struggling with his conscience.
Right. He's seen the ugly truth about the IRA, the hypocrisy, the brutality, but he's also seen the courage of people like Kathy Murphy who stood up to them.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal moment in the story, Francie's own beliefs clashing with loyalty and the weight of history.
And then there's Handy Byrne lurking in the background.
Right, the guy who assaulted Kathy. He's still out there, hiding in the mountains.
The IRA's got to find him, not just for the community, but to regain control.
This manhunt becomes a huge focus in the novel.
Yeah.
It shows how ruthless the IRA can be, even while talking peace.
They're more worried about silencing people than actual justice.
Exactly. And MOC, that savvy politician, he sees an opportunity.
Oh, of course he does.
He wants Handy gone permanently.
To keep up his peacemaker image.
Exactly. It's a reminder of how cynical power can be. People get used and tossed aside for political gain.
MOC sees Handy as a problem, so he'll use the IRA to get rid of him. Consequences be damned.
It highlights the messy reality of peace talks.
Yeah.
Idealism and pragmatism clashing, moral compromises made in the name of progress.
So how does Francie deal with all this? He's clearly at a breaking point.
Well, Francie's journey in the novel is a descent into disillusionment, like peeling back layers to find the rot at the heart of everything he once believed in. He's seen betrayals, lies, violence justified for a cause that rings hollow now.
That's got to be tough.
And in the final part, he takes a stand, confronts both Naylor and MOC.
Wow. Head on.
Yeah. Calls them out on their hypocrisy, their corruption, exposes their manipulations, how they use violence for their own gain while talking about peace.
That's huge. But it's not just words, right?
No, Francie takes action, intervenes in the hunt for Handy, stops the IRA from killing him.
He protects the guy who assaulted Kathy. Why?
It's complicated.
It is.
On one hand, it's rejecting the IRA's twisted sense of justice,
Yeah.
the kind that silences people instead of seeking truth. But it's also an act of compassion, recognizing Handy's humanity even when he's done something terrible.
It makes you think about justice, redemption.
Exactly. Is Francie a hero for this, or is he just letting violence continue? The novel doesn't give easy answers.
It leaves you thinking. And the ending, wow, Handy actually survives. The guy who represents the IRA's brutality.
He walks back into town, wounded but unrepentant, a living reminder of the violence that still lingers.
It's chilling. Peace can be so fragile.
It is, haunted by the past.
And Francie, what happens to him?
He's alone, rejected by both sides, a pariah carrying the burden of his choices.
It's a bleak ending. So after looking at all of this, what do we take away from Cross and Francie's story?
I think we've seen the human side of conflict.
Definitely.
The moral struggles, the sacrifices people make, trying to find meaning in a world where violence often wins.
We see how idealism gets crushed, power corrupts.
And how individuals can be part of the problem but also resist it. Francie shows us that.
That tension between loyalty and conscience.
Right, and the courage it takes to challenge those in power.
We've also seen how messy justice can be.
Yeah, especially when the lines between good and bad are blurred. How one person's actions can make a difference, challenge the way things are, inspire others to speak up.
Powerful stuff.
And ultimately, I think it reminds us of the power of stories.
For sure.
To show us uncomfortable truths, challenge our beliefs, make us wrestle with tough questions. Cross really captures the human spirit, its darkness, its resilience, that constant search for meaning even when things are terrible.
We hope this deep dive gave you a glimpse into the troubles.
Not just as history, but as a human experience that still matters today.
It's a story about conflict, morality, and the search for peace and justice in a world that can be very complicated.